The sky over Vortali's prime was a burning shade of violet, choked with smoke and dying stars. The screams of the native Tolari echoed across the metal canyons of their cities as the Zarath Empire marched across their world with plasma rifles and war beasts bred only for destruction. The Galactic Union had declared neutrality, as always. No one interfered in internal planetary conflicts. It was protocol, it was politics, and it was absolute cowardice. The Tari were peaceful, technologically behind, spiritually advanced but militarily useless. They stood no chance. The Union watched from orbit, silent, observing, recording, but never stepping in because no one was supposed to interfere. Until Earth did. 2 standard days after the first Tari capital was reduced to rubble, the Zarath fleet began receiving strange pings on their long-range radar. Unfamiliar signatures, fast, coordinated from outside the local system. The Zarath assumed it was Union tech, maybe another fleet sent to observe, but the pings kept multiplying, hundreds, then thousands. Ships began appearing just outside Vortali's prime's orbit, sleek, dark-hulled, bristling with weaponry. No warning, no communications, just presence. Then the message came, one transmission blasting through every frequency. "This is Admiral Leon Voss of the Earth War Fleet. Vortali's prime is under our protection. Withdraw immediately or you will be fired upon." The Zarath didn't laugh. They didn't mock. They froze because Earth wasn't part of the Union, not anymore. They'd left the Council a decade ago, citing bureaucracy and moral rot. Everyone thought they'd gone back to their little blue marble, licking wounds and arguing politics. No one had seen Earth's military in years. They were assumed dormant. But humans never went dormant. They prepared. Admiral Voss's face was a grim mask on every Zarketh screen, scarred, gray-eyed, and pissed off. Behind him, footage showed rows of Earth's newest battle cruisers, massive ships with cannons designed to punch holes in planets, not just other ships. Each vessel named for an ancient warrior, philosopher, or war crime the galaxy thought extinct. The Zarketh hesitated for the first time since conquering the outer systems. They blinked. "Earth has no stake in this world," came the Zarath commander's reply. "This is a sanctioned occupation." Voss didn't even flinch. "That's not how we see it." Then Earth fired the first salvo, vaporized half the Zarath's front line before they even had shields up. Earth's war fleet didn't fight clean. They fought to win, jamming enemy communications, hacking into Zarath AI systems, dropping Black Ops teams directly onto enemy carriers mid-battle. The Zarath hadn't seen tactics like this in centuries because humans didn't fight like the others. They didn't care for glory. They didn't care for honor. They fought dirty, they fought smart, and they fought angry. The Tari watched from the ground as strange, dark ships screamed through the clouds and lit up the sky like angry gods. Some wept, some prayed, others simply stared, unable to process what they were seeing. Earth, this forgotten backward species from a mid-tier system, was taking on one of the largest empires in the galaxy, and they were winning. In orbit, the battle turned from resistance to retreat. Zarath ships tried to jump out, only to be caught in Earth's gravity wells, pulling them back in like prey caught in a hunter's trap. The carnage was surgical, efficient, brutal. Down on the surface, Tari elders gathered in their temples, trying to understand what was happening, why humans, creatures they barely knew, had come for them. There was no answer, no divine prophecy, no secret alliance. Just one stubborn species that couldn't sit still and watch injustice happen. Later that night, as the last Zarketh dreadnought burned in orbit, Admiral Voss stood on the bridge of the ISS Vengeance and said quietly, no one was supposed to interfere. But someone had to, and Earth had volunteered. The days that followed were silent but not peaceful. The battlefield that once circled Vortali's prime had turned into a graveyard of Zarath wreckage, floating husks drifting in cold orbit. Earth's war fleet held position, dozens of ships like shadows across the stars. They didn't speak. They didn't negotiate. They only cleaned up what they destroyed. Inside the Tari cities, survivors emerged from underground shelters. Buildings were gone, temples turned to ash, families shattered. Yet when they looked skyward, they saw protection, not gods, not angels, but something strangely more comforting, humans. Tari history had no record of Earth, barely a mention in Union archives, just another loud, restless species that had once begged for entry into the Galactic Union and had been granted probationary status. They were considered primitive, violent, unrefined, but they'd remembered the Tari when no one else did. A young Tari girl named Kaylin wandered the ruins of her town, holding her brother's hand. They were looking for food, or at least something edible among the scorched stone, when a shadow fell over them. They froze. The fear was instinct by now. Zarth patrols had done unspeakable things to families like theirs. But it wasn't Zarth. A tall, armor-plated human stepped forward from the smoke, helmeted, rifle slung across the back. The insignia on the chest read, Earth Space Marines Alpha Team. The soldier knelt down slowly, removing his helmet. His face was scarred, his expression tired but kind. He pulled a ration pack from his belt and handed it to Kaylin without a word. She didn't move at first, just stared. Then she grabbed it and ran. Back on the ISS Vengeance, Admiral Voss was meeting with his staff. "We need to be careful," he said. "Union eyes are watching, and they're not happy." "They'll threaten sanctions," replied Commander Ryu, his second in command. "Maybe blockade one of our colonies." Voss laughed without humor. "Let them try. We've got tech they don't even know we've built, and they lost the moral high ground the day they stood by and watched this genocide." Another officer, Lieutenant Sanders, spoke up. "Sir, we're getting strange chatter from Union diplomats. They're accusing us of violating multiple interplanetary neutrality laws. Some say the Tari weren't even a recognized sovereign race." Voss leaned forward. "Tell them to go to hell and prep another relief drop. These people need food, not politics." But it wasn't just Union politicians who were angry. The Zareth weren't done. 2 systems away, High Warlord Kresh of the Zareth Empire stood aboard his flagship, the Dominator. The loss at Vortali's Prime was being called a setback by the press, but he knew better. It was a humiliation, a challenge. And to be challenged by humans, a species the Zarath once mocked as biological vermin, was unacceptable. He ordered the assembly of a retaliatory fleet. 30 carriers, 8 dreadnoughts, and 1 experimental weapon, the Maw of Azeroth, a planetary eraser banned by the Union but built in secret. The message was clear: Earth would pay. But they underestimated humanity again, because Earth didn't wait to be attacked. It struck first. 2 days before the Zark fleet launched, Earth's covert units dropped onto their forward supply moons. No grand invasion, no announcements, just sudden chaos. Explosions, data wiped, fuel silos rigged to detonate military-grade viruses corrupting navigation software. By the time the Zarketh flagship received the signal, half their supply chain was gone. Their fleet could launch, but they'd run out of fuel within days. It wasn't war the way the Zarath knew it. It was chess, and Earth was already 5 moves ahead. Meanwhile, Admiral Voss opened a secure channel, not to the Union, not to the Zareth, but to every other race in the galaxy watching the chaos unfold. His face, worn and unshaken, appeared on thousands of screens. "We're not here for conquest. We're not here to police your laws. We're here because someone had to be. If you stand by and watch evil, you are part of it. If the Union wants to expel Earth from the galactic table, so be it. We'd rather stand alone than sit in silence with cowards." It was the beginning of something larger, not just a war, a movement. And Earth, loud, dangerous, underestimated Earth, had just become the spark. The shock waves of Earth's interference didn't just ripple, they shattered silence across the galaxy. In the shining halls of the Galactic Union, chaos reigned behind velvet curtains. Delegates screamed across chambers. Words like illegal, unilateral, and unstable were hurled like grenades. But beneath the polished outrage was fear. Fear that Earth had not only violated interstellar law, but exposed how worthless it really was. Ambassador Drexen of the Tellarith Confederacy, a longtime critic of humanity, slammed his fist against the podium. "This kind of reckless interventionism undermines the very fabric of peace the Union was built upon." "Peace," retorted the Marak envoy, eyes narrowing. "Is that what we call watching a peaceful civilization burn while sipping wine on observation decks?" The chamber broke into murmurs. For the first time in centuries, the Union looked fractured. Outside that chamber, however, the reaction was far more visceral. Across fringe colonies, trade hubs, and even pirate outposts, something changed. The footage of Earth's fleet obliterating the Zarath wasn't just news. It became legend. People whispered about humanity again, not as primitives, but as warriors, protectors, avenging demons in steel. Even races who once laughed at Earth's chaotic politics now replayed Admiral Voss's speech in admiration. One such listener was Coyle, a former smuggler turned mercenary on the run from Union law. Sitting in a dive bar on Grease Station, he watched Voss's face on a flickering hollow screen and muttered, "Damn, Those Earth bastards finally did something no one else had the balls to do. "You think they'll win?" asked a breathy engineer beside him. Kyle chuckled. "They already did, they woke us up." Back on Vortali's prime, things were changing too. Earth engineers began rebuilding power grids, restoring water systems, and even constructing temporary shelters for displaced Tari. Not because they had to, but because they wouldn't walk away from half-finished justice. Colin, the young Tari girl, had started shadowing the Earth Marines, mimicking their movements. The same soldier who gave her the ration pack, Sergeant Juno Clark, had taken notice. He started teaching her words in English, and in return she showed him Tari songs of mourning. It wasn't just recovery, it was connection. Admiral Voss, however, knew the storm was far from over. He sat alone in his quarters, reviewing intelligence. The Zarkith were bleeding, but they weren't dead. And now they were angry and worse, desperate. His analysts confirmed a pattern, coordinated disappearances of entire research stations in Zarath territory. Too clean, too sudden, something was coming. "Sir," Commander Ryu buzzed in, "long-range probes detected movement on the edge of the Illa's void. Zarkth energy signatures, big ones. They're hiding something." Voss didn't blink. "Prep the fleet, we move at dawn." "But sir," Ryu hesitated, "we're already pushing capacity. Engineers are stretched, crews are exhausted." Voss's voice dropped cold. "If we wait for the Union to act, Fortali's will be the first of many. And if the Zarath unleash what I think they're building, we'll be counting fallen planets, not bodies." Elsewhere in the heart of Zarkith territory, High Warlord Kresh stood before the Maw of Azeroth. It wasn't a ship. It was a weapon shaped like a god's dagger. This monstrous construct was designed to collapse planetary cores from orbit, leaving nothing but molten ruin, forbidden by every galactic treaty. But Kresh didn't care. Earth had embarrassed him, had ruined centuries of conquest. He would answer with extinction. "Is it ready?" he growled. The lead technician nodded. "Power core stabilized. One planet-wide test will finalize calibration." Kresh turned towards the stars. "Target Vortali's." Back in orbit above the Tari home world, Earth sensors pinged violently. A mass, colossal and inbound, had just entered their quadrant. And it wasn't a fleet, it was a monster. The stars didn't just blink, they vanished. From the observation decks of Earth's lead dreadnought, ISS Vengeance, the crew watched as a black silhouette emerged from hyperspace, slow, deliberate, impossibly massive. It wasn't shaped like a vessel. It didn't glide or drift like a fleet would. No, it loomed. The Maw of Azeroth had entered the system. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered on the bridge. No one responded because the thing filled half the sky. Sensors struggled to lock onto it, not because it was cloaked, but because it bent light and gravity around itself. Even Earth's advanced tech couldn't fully comprehend what it was made of. All Admiral Voss knew was this: it wasn't just a weapon, it was a message. Down on the surface, Tari elders fell to their knees. The arrival of the Maw was like a dark eclipse. The sky turned red as clouds caught the pulse of the thing's drive engines. Kaelin, holding her brother's hand, stared at it in silence. Even she could feel it, the hum, the vibration in her chest, like something ancient was waking up. Onboard Vengeance, the bridge was chaos. Alarms screamed. Commanders barked coordinates and scrambled fleets into defensive formation, but nothing felt right. The Maw wasn't behaving like a ship. It wasn't powering weapons. It wasn't launching fighters. It was just there. Voss stood, jaw tight. "It's charging something. It doesn't need to fight us. It came for the planet." "Sir," Ryu called, "if it fires on Vortali's, our ground teams, the Tari, they'll be erased." "All of them," Voss said grimly. He slammed his fist down. "Not on my watch." Within moments, Voss issued the most desperate order in Earth's war protocol: Divine Shield. Every orbital cannon turned toward the Maw. Carriers moved into sacrifice positions, blocking trajectories, calculating suicide burns. He wasn't planning a fight. He was planning a wall. Humans had fought on 100 worlds, but this was madness. And yet every ship obeyed because humans were stupid like that. They stood between death and strangers. Below, Sergeant Juno Clark gathered his squad. "Evac inbound. We're pulling civilians now. Get those kids loaded, move." As engines roared overhead, dozens of human transports pierced the clouds, touching down amidst Tari ruins to pull as many survivors as possible. But it was a race against time. The Maw lit up not with fire, but silence. All sound in the system dropped to zero, no static, no hum, even the wind stopped. Then came the vibration, deep, bone-rattling, ancient, like the universe had a voice and it had finally decided to speak. And its word was death. Earth's warfleet opened fire, plasma cannons, kinetic slugs, orbital lances, everything. The space around the maw turned white with fury. Its outer shell cracked. Pieces flew off, but it didn't slow. Its core, a deep, glowing abyss of pure gravitational fire, began expanding. Voss shouted through comms, "Redirect all planetary cannons. Get me a power surge from the reactor. If we go down holding the damn line." And just as the maw reached critical charge, a flicker, a blip, a single vessel, long-range and off-grid, appeared from deep space FTL. The ISS Eclipse, thought destroyed 5 years ago in the Orion ambush, emerged behind the maw with its engines redlining and hull bleeding fire. Its captain, Commander Eliza Corrin, opened a direct channel. "No time to explain. Targeting breach point, going in." Voss's eyes widened. "Eliza, that ship's not rated for a suicide run." Her voice was quiet, steady. "I know." And the Eclipse surged forward, dodging debris, slipping through blind spots. The vessel spun and accelerated toward the maw's vulnerable rear, a section Earth's earlier bombardment had compromised. As it pierced the barrier, the ship began to break apart. But Corrin didn't stop. She armed the core, fusion destabilized. The Eclipse exploded inside the maw like a dying star, and everything went white. The shockwave struck, every ship shook. The planet and even knocked several orbital defense systems offline. But when the light cleared, the maw was gone, not destroyed. Erased. Whatever Earth's fleet hadn't damaged, the Eclipse had undone from within. Silence returned, then sound, then breath. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Voss sat down, eyes stinging. No one spoke, they didn't cheer, they didn't celebrate, they just lived. And down on the surface, Kylan looked up and saw, for the first time in weeks, the real sky, free of shadows. The aftermath wasn't peace, it was morning. The sky above Vortalis Prime had cleared, but what hung in the air now wasn't danger. It was the weight of sacrifice. The Maw of Azeroth was gone, but so was the ISS Eclipse. Commander Eliza Corrin's name would be etched into the history of two worlds, Earth and Vortalis, as the woman who flew into a god's mouth and closed it from the inside. In the Union's core sectors, the event was impossible to ignore. News feeds were flooded with raw footage. Earth ships shielding alien civilians, Marines dragging injured Tari through burning ruins, children cradled in armored arms as missiles lit the horizon. And of course, the last transmission from Corrin before her ship disappeared into the Maw's breach. I wasn't raised to look away. It was played on repeat across thousands of worlds. The narrative shifted fast. No longer were humans just reckless or unpredictable. They were something far more dangerous to the Union's careful apathy, inspiring. Out in the Midbelt colonies, where miners had begged for Union help against smugglers and slavers, protests broke out. "Where was the Union when we needed saving?" they shouted. "Earth fights for others, why won't you fight for us?" And in the halls of the Union Council, that fear turned to strategy. They tried to discredit Earth, claimed the Maw was never real, that the Zark threat was exaggerated, that Earth's videos were emotionally manipulative war propaganda. But even some of their own ambassadors didn't believe it anymore. On Vortalis, Earth's ground teams didn't leave. They stayed, built, rebuilt. They cleared rubble, planted food, and trained young Tari in survival, even defense. They didn't turn it into a colony. They didn't put up a flag. They just did what no one else would, help. Kaylin watched the humans with quiet fascination. She carried her translator device everywhere now and asked Juno Clark 100 questions a day. Why do humans fight so much? Juno had to think about that one. We don't like being told who's worth saving and who isn't. She nodded as if that answer explained war itself. Later that week, a Tari ceremony was held. Hundreds of survivors gathered in the rebuilt amphitheater beneath the cliffs of their sacred valley. A massive stone tablet was unveiled, names carved in both Tari and Terran glyphs, the names of the fallen. Eliza Corrin's name was carved first. Admiral Voss stood among the crowd but did not speak. He didn't need to. The way the Tari looked at him said everything: respect, gratitude, and a growing sense that humanity wasn't just another race in the stars. They were protectors and threats. Because far beyond the edge of known space, in the shadow sectors where exiled factions and warlords lingered, the legend of Earth's warfleet was spreading like wildfire. In smoke-choked bars and warship hangars, alien mercenaries told stories of humans who could hack dreadnoughts mid-battle. of Marines who injected combat stimulants that made them fight even with broken bones, of captains who stared down extinction without blinking. Most thought the stories were exaggerations, but not all. On the edges of the outer spiral, a message was sent through encrypted channels to a hidden enclave of Zarketh survivors. It read, "We know what Earth is now, but they've revealed their hand too soon. If they want to interfere, let's make sure they die with the ones they protect." Plans were already moving. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the population was divided. Some hailed Voss and the fleet as heroes, demanding the official creation of the Earth Defense and Liberation Force as a permanent entity. Others feared the consequences. They asked whether humanity had just invited the galaxy's wrath upon itself. At a private ceremony, Voss stood before the United Terran Assembly and addressed them for the first time since returning from Vortalis. "I didn't go to war for politics. I didn't defy the Union for applause. I did it because I couldn't sleep knowing a world was dying while we sat in silence. If that's a crime, then I'll wear the cuffs myself." The room went dead silent, and then, slowly, a standing ovation. Because somewhere deep down, even those who feared war understood the truth. Humanity had changed, and the galaxy would never forget that Earth had been quiet until it wasn't. The storm didn't end with victory, it just changed shape. Weeks after the battle, as the fires on Vortali's Prime faded into quiet reconstruction, Earth's warfleet began withdrawing slowly, cautiously. They left behind defense satellites, autonomous drones, and 2 orbital platforms to assist the Tari in rebuilding. But they couldn't stay forever. Or so they thought. Because something else had begun, refugees. Not just Tari, but others from scattered worlds abandoned by the Union, from planets caught between criminal syndicates and indifferent lawmakers. They'd seen the broadcasts, heard the stories. Earth helped, Earth fought, and now Earth was being treated like a myth, like an answer. Admiral Voss watched from the command tower of orbital platform Hezekiah as refugee ships began arriving, battered and overcrowded, civilians from 6 different species carrying little more than faith in a war fleet they barely understood. He turned to Commander Ryu. "This wasn't supposed to happen." Ryu just nodded, "But it has." And it wasn't just refugees. Volunteers, too. Engineers from fractured worlds, disillusioned Union officers, even smugglers who'd grown tired of selling poison to desperate colonies. They all came asking the same thing: where do we sign up? Voss didn't know what to call it. Not yet. It wasn't an empire. Earth didn't conquer. It didn't demand loyalty. It earned it. Down on Vortalis, Colin had become a symbol, the little Tari girl who'd survived occupation and now walked among armored Terran soldiers like she belonged there. She'd begun learning to read English. She wore a badge with Earth's insignia, gifted by Juno Clark himself. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was learning to lead. And elsewhere, far from hope, a shadow moved. In a cold station orbiting a dying star, High Warlord Kresh stood in the darkness, watching footage of the Maw's destruction again and again. Each time, he paused at the exact second the eclipse ruptured inside the core. He didn't blink, didn't speak. Behind him, a new figure entered, one not Zarketh, but worse. A member of the Varn Collective, banned from Union diplomacy and exiled to the fringe for biological experimentation. They had no face, just a shimmering veil of synthetic nerves stretched across bone. "They have spirit," the Varn hissed. Kresh turned slowly. "They have teeth, and now they have followers." The Varn replied, amused. "Careful, Warlord. A movement built on martyrdom and mercy is harder to crush than a planet." Kresh grunted. "Then we'll burn the idea, burn every world that whispers it." He turned to a hologram projecting a long-abandoned outpost near the galactic spine. "Begin Project Hollowar. If Earth wants war, we will teach them what war means." Back in the inner rim, the Union fumbled for relevance. Earth had sparked something they couldn't control, and fear turned to bureaucracy. Closed-door sessions were held to discuss the Terran problem. Words like sanctions and containment floated again, but some delegates pushed back. The Marak envoy, once neutral, now warned. "You treat Earth like a threat, but to the people beyond this chamber, they are already saviors. Do not provoke what you cannot intimidate." Too late, because Earth wasn't waiting. Inside an undisclosed facility on Mars, classified blueprints were being laid out. Voss had given approval for the rapid expansion of Earth's defense fleet, but it wasn't just more ships. It was something new. Project Nightbane, a hybrid warship built from Zarki salvaged Maw fragments and pure Terran aggression, designed not just for war but for psychological impact. Its mission would be simple: arrive first, speak last, and leave nothing but silence in between. Juno Clark had been selected to command it. When asked why, he answered simply, "Because someone needs to be the shadow that follows the scream." Voss watched him leave with quiet pride. Earth hadn't set out to build an army, but now it had become the galaxy's first true rebellion, and the spark was spreading. The galaxy didn't sleep anymore. Every outpost, every fringe colony, every backwater planet once ignored by the Union had begun to whisper the same name: Earth. The word passed like contraband through spaceports and refugee shuttles, muttered with awe, sometimes fear, always hope. Where Earth ships had gone, silence turned to resistance. Where they hadn't, the people waited, prayed, or prepared. And then the retaliation began. It started small: communications blackouts in Terran-aligned systems, trade routes mysteriously collapsing, and Union inspection ships rerouted to delay Earth supply lines. But it didn't stay small. 2 weeks after the destruction of the Maw, the Zarketh struck again, not with a fleet, with something else. On the mining colony of Ferex 9, Earth engineers had only just completed repairs to a shield generator when the atmosphere screamed. Literally. A sonic pulse blasted from deep orbit, killing every unprotected life form within seconds. The survivors, those with Terran ear implants, described it as a scream that wanted to be heard forever. The pulse originated from an object the size of a dropship but made of organic crystal and covered in what scientists called neural filament. A bioweapon, alien and wrong. When Earth sent recovery teams, the object exploded into spores, some of which burrowed into the station's systems and tried to rewrite the AI. They barely got out alive. This was no longer war, it was infection. Admiral Voss called an emergency assembly on Mars. Every allied species who had joined Earth's cause, now unofficially known as the Free Stars Pact, sent representatives. Some old, some young, all afraid. Voss stood before them in the war chamber, no longer the careful strategist, but a man changed by the responsibility of the future. "We're not just fighting the Zareth anymore," he began. "They've allied with something older, something broken, and it doesn't want territory. It wants silence. It wants extinction. And we're in the way." A Marak general spoke up. "You believe this new weapon is sentient?" "I believe it's worse," Voss said. "I believe it doesn't care if it is." While the Free Stars Pact scrambled for strategy, Project Nightbane was completed in orbit around Jupiter. The ship wasn't just advanced. It was terrifying, built with a sleek obsidian hull laced with Zarkth bone armor. It pulsed faintly, almost like it breathed. Instead of a nameplate, it had only a single etched phrase across its flank in ancient Earth Latin: "Fiat Tenerae, let there be darkness." Juno Clark boarded it with a crew of Multiesses volunteers, humans, Marak, Tari, and even 2 exiled Varn defectors. They didn't salute. They didn't chant. They simply nodded because by now they understood they weren't saviors. They were the knife in the dark. Their first mission came within days. A black site near the dead system of Vascure, reported to be manufacturing Screamtech weapons similar to Ferex 9. It was deep in former Zarath territory, supposedly abandoned. It wasn't. As Nightbane exited warp, it was met with silence. Then singing, not music, voices, children's voices. The crew froze. The bridge was filled with transmissions that had no source, all mimicking voices from crew members' pasts, lost friends, dead siblings, old commanders. The ship's AI flagged it immediately as cognitive mimic warfare, an attack on the mind. Clark didn't flinch. He ordered all comms cut, switched control to neural link interface, and gave a single command: "Target the anomaly, burn it." Nightbane opened fire, not with cannons, but with something new, a black light lance that disrupted biological tech, melting neural code into static. The black sight didn't explode. It screamed, then folded in on itself like a dying thought. Silence returned. Clark exhaled slowly. Next target. Earth wasn't just defending anymore, they were hunting. It didn't end with a battle, it ended with a choice. Months had passed since Earth's first intervention. In that time, war had become background noise across the stars. Fleets moved like shadows, alliances formed in secret, and the Free Stars Pact grew from a desperate few into a force capable of reshaping the galaxy. But the cost was steep. Whole sectors lay in ruin. Dozens of refugee planets now relied on Earth's convoys just to eat. Every new ally Earth gained was another reason for its enemies to tighten the noose. And behind all of it, something worse was stirring. They called it the Hollow, not quite Zarath, not quite Varn. A result of something far older than either, perhaps a forgotten experiment or a dormant intelligence finally awakened by Earth's defiance. Whatever it was, it had no ships, no flag, just presence, creeping through old Zarkith tech, hijacking failed Union AI, whispering through broken satellites. It was spreading. Project Nightbane's most recent encounter with it was nearly fatal. The ship had disabled a rogue orbital relay infected with hollow code, but in doing so, it triggered a deep-mind virus that locked the ship's AI in a logic loop for 6 hours. The Nightbane drifted, unresponsive, until Clark himself overrode the system by hardwiring his own neural path into the core. He barely survived, but he left the virus intact, encased in a containment field, and brought it back to Mars. Voss stared at the thing in its prison, a cube of red light pulsing gently, as if breathing. Scientists debated whether it was alive. Theologians debated whether it was evil. The AI refused to even describe it. They asked Voss what to do with it. He didn't hesitate. Send it into the sun. But before they could, the cube pulsed and spoke, not with words, with memory. Suddenly, everyone on the observation deck was there, reliving a moment they'd never shared, a battlefield, Earth soldiers screaming, Union ships retreating. But more than that, they felt what the cube wanted them to feel: shame, pain, failure. It didn't threaten. It judged. The cube's message was clear. You're not saving the galaxy, you're unmaking it. Your interference is the infection, we are the cure. And for the first time since this war began, Voss looked shaken. Back on Vortalis, Kaelin stood atop the high cliffs, now dressed in an Earth Fleet cadet's uniform, watching the stars. Her planet was healing slowly, but she knew it wouldn't last, not unless someone kept watch. She wasn't a child anymore. She had chosen her path. She had chosen Earth. On Mars, debate erupted across the assembly. Do they go to full war with the Hollow? Do they keep expanding, keep fighting when the galaxy seems to be unraveling under the weight of this new force? Or do they do the one thing no one expects? Stop. Voss took the floor for the last time. We didn't come out here to be heroes. We didn't build fleets to wear medals. We did it because someone had to say enough. The Union couldn't. The Zarth never would, so we did. And maybe we are the infection to a system that grew too quiet, too comfortable letting people die quietly. So be it. I'd rather be an infection than a coward. The chamber was dead quiet. Then slowly, one by one, the delegates of the Free Stars Pact stood. And Earth made its final move, a declaration not of conquest, not of war, but of presence. Earth would remain. It would fight. It would stand wherever the galaxy needed someone to stand against tyrants, against monsters, even against ghosts. And if the stars wanted to burn them for it, then Earth would burn loud, defiant, unbroken. Because no one was supposed to interfere, but Earth did. And now nothing would ever be the same.